The Avengers are Earth's mightiest heroes, and the whole world, every world knows it. From their battles in New York to the Eastern European city of Sakovia, the Avengers have had many battles together, and even more apart from each other. But the question that rings in the heads of every fan of the series, and even the Avengers themselves, is who is the strongest Avenger of them all? Is it the Hulk, the self-proclaimed strongest there is? Or perhaps Iron Man with all of his technological wonders? Thor, perhaps, with his godlike abilities? Or maybe it's Captain America, the icon of strength, purity, and the American dream? Well, I hope to help answer this question for you, but please do remember that this video is based upon my own opinion and interpretation of events, and may not fit your own personal ranking, which is okay. It's subjective, and each Avenger's power changes often. You expect our favorite heroes to maintain a static level of strength? Of course not. They grow with each threat, and their potential knows no bounds. So let's just take a look at the Avengers and discuss who the strongest Avengers are, and feel free to get involved in the debate in the comments. But remember, true fans and true heroes respect the opinion of others. So be sure to remain kind and respectful. Without further ado, let's get into the ranking. Number 10. Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man. Now, it probably seems wrong to put Ant-Man here. He is, after all, capable of time travel, which is a powerful ability. Without Ant-Man, Thanos would have never truly been defeated. To be frank with you, Thanos would also not have been able to return from his alternate timeline either. Scott is a powerful hero, despite none of his powers actually being bred into him. In truth, he was merely just a former burglar who was good at what he did. But he wished to spend time with his daughter Cassie. That was sadly out of reach due to him being unable to hold a proper job because of his criminal record. It was only after the genius scientist Hank Pym discovered him that Scott's life turned around. Utilizing a special suit and Pym particles, Scott took up the mantle of the second Ant-Man, replacing Hank himself. Scott's job was to ensure that the Pym particle would stay out of the hands of the unworthy, including the former protege of Hank Pym, Darren Cross, who had removed Hank from his own company in order to continue researching the Pym particle, which Hank had locked away for fear of its misuse. Darren eventually perfected the formula and sold it to a certain organization whose motto rhymes with Flail Flydra, becoming the Yellow Jacket. This would lead to a confrontation in Cassie's bedroom, which would see Darren and Scott nearly kill each other, as Darren's warped body and Scott were both sent to the quantum realm, a realm with which time and space and their laws seemed to fall apart. Scott barely escaped, possessing few memories of what actually happened there, while Darren was sent to the Underverse, where he was found and helped by Nathaniel Richards, whose variant went by the name of Kang. Scott later would be the one to set in motion the plan to bring the population of the universe back by traveling back in time to collect the Infinity Stones that would be able to undo the damage done. Possessing the ability to shrink to practically any size or grow to over 100 feet tall, Ant-Man is a very versatile hero. With such powers, one might wonder why he's so low on the list, and that's generally because anyone with Pym particles in training could do what he does. Imagine if Tony Stark had access to the Pym particle formula. While he does have incredible feats, it would be unfair to set him so high on the list. If we did, then we'd also have to set the rat that brought him back as one of the strongest Avengers. If you disagree though, that's okay. This is just my reasoning for why he's considered lower. Most of the other Avengers have time traveled at least once, so that is another reason. Number 9. Vision. Vision wasn't always the same robot Wanda fell in love with. He started his life in a Stark Industries lab, where he was created by the genius scientist, playboy, and philanthropist Tony Stark. Given that he was inspired by Howard Stark's personal butler, Edwin Jarvis, Tony created this AI and dedicated it to the man by naming it Jarvis. Jarvis was one of, if not the most advanced artificial intelligence humankind had ever known at that point, but he was still imperfect, which led to Tony Stark and Bruce Banner seeking a more perfect AI. This would only be fulfilled when they got a hold of Loki's scepter, which had been under the control of Hydra forces after the Battle of New York. Discovering that it possessed the Mind Stone, the two began to use it to study and develop a new artificial intelligence that would be able to protect the world with the Iron Legion, and called it Ultron. Despite everything, they couldn't get Ultron to awaken, which caused both Stark and Banner to fear for their project. However, when nobody but Jarvis was paying attention, Ultron came online. Ultron immediately knew he was not meant to be a disembodied consciousness, claiming that it felt wrong. This leads me to believe that Ultron was actually a living being, less artificial and more intelligent than anything, but anyway, he quickly opened up the dumpster fire that is social media and decided that all humans needed to die. Fair. He then attacked Jarvis and attempted to corrupt him, but Jarvis took initiative and made his own decision to upload himself to the internet, where he would then secretly fight against Ultron from the shadows, stopping Ultron from attaining the nuclear codes that would wipe out humanity. As Ultron attempted to upload his consciousness to a neo-organic body, he was interrupted, and Ultron's vision for the future was seized by the Avengers. Sure of himself, but acting impulsively, Stark attempted to complete Jarvis with some of the data left behind by Ultron, and uploaded his consciousness to a new body, which of course succeeded and became the hero we now know as Vision. And while Vision was completely artificial, he began to take in new information quickly and develop emotions, coming to recognize the sanctity of life Astro Boy style, and would go on to fight against his progenitor Ultron and end him to save the world. From there, Vision would come into contact with Wanda Maximoff and came to appreciate her. The two would develop a relationship, to which both dreamed of marrying and having children. This became impossible when he was killed first by Wanda herself and then by Thanos as well. Bro died twice in one day to save the world, and it still didn't work. That's gotta sting. Anyway, he would later be revived by the government organization for studying and developing technology, an organization known as SWORD. They would manage to resurrect him as White Vision and would proceed to set him loose on Westview, New Jersey. He would fight with the false reality version of Vision and help his resurrected self remember who he is. This didn't bring much solace to Wanda though, as anyone who has seen the Multiverse of Madness knows. She's the source of the madness in the title of the movie, by the way. He has the ability to fly, turn his body intangible, and fire an energy beam from the jewel on his head. At first it was the Mind Stone, which had the power of, well, infinity. But as White Vision, it's replaced by a new crystal entirely that mimics similar abilities, though obviously not capable of infinite power. He is indeed strong, but feats-wise, all he's really done is die for dramatic effect and serve as character development for the other characters, which is 100% okay. No story can be great without a great foil, am I right? Number 8. Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Peter Parker was once a very intelligent student of Midtown High. He was never the strongest or anything, and was often seen as a geek or less than a man by school bullies such as Flash Thompson, who tended to exclude him from everything just to be mean. But of course, we all know what happens next. After the death of his uncle, Peter takes to heart the phrase, "With great power comes great responsibility." Peter would take the powers bestowed upon him by that radioactive spider and begin to become a regular do-gooder, stopping petty criminals, felons, and even your occasional supervillain. This gets him recognized by Tony Stark, who's still reeling from his actions in Sakovia during their war against Ultron. He decides to take Peter under his wing, not only to make a great hero out of him, but also to make a great student by funding his college tuition. After some character growth, Peter goes on to receive the Iron Spider suit, which he uses during the entirety of Infinity War. During this time, Spidey becomes a victim of what would later be known as the Blip, where people cease to exist for a good few years. Tony watches as Peter essentially dies in his arms, which was the one thing he was afraid of most. This didn't leave Tony without scars. But eventually, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man returns to life after a snap of Hulk's fingers and attempts to help them take down Thanos, where he attempts to safeguard the new Infinity Gauntlet. Of course, he gets his world rocked when he's struck and needs to take a breather because, let's be real, he's just a teenager. He would later face off against Mysterio and be accused of his murder as a last screw you from the dying villain. The world then begins to hate Peter, and he travels to Doctor Strange and asks that he erase everyone's memories. The Doctor agrees, but after Peter's indecisive nature causes the spell to backfire, it causes everyone who knew his secret identity to come to his universe. This makes a mass incursion sure to destroy the universe unless they fix it. Thankfully, he's aided by the amazing Peter Parker and the not-so-bully Maguire Parker. Together they undo the damage done, but only by causing everyone to forget who Peter Parker is, which essentially erases his identity and leaves Peter as a nameless nomad, who thankfully will receive another movie soon. Probably gonna be titled Spider-Man Homeless or Got No Home or something. Our favorite wall crawler is one of the coolest heroes, and he was always my all-time favorite growing up, as I'm sure he was for most kids. Stan Lee wrote him to be relatable to kids because he was one himself, so it's no surprise. Spider-Man's feats of strength are prodigious, but he rarely uses his full abilities. His strength compares to, or even surpasses, Captain America and his super soldier brother from another mother, Bucky Barnes. But one of his most useful abilities remains the Spider Sense, which more than just warns him of impending danger in an almost precognitive way, but also seems to move him out of danger via reflex, even if Peter is unconscious or having an out-of-body experience. These powers are certainly enough to do the trick when he's in a pinch and have earned him his spot here. And if that's not enough in your eyes, guys, remember that the guy basically has more variants than Nathaniel Richards, or should I say Spider-Man himself does. I'm sure you all know about the Spider-Verse. Number 7. Bruce Banner, aka the Incredible Hulk. Dr. David, Bruce Banner, and yes, I call him David, I love the Lou Ferrigno series and still think Bill Bixby is the best Dr. Banner there is, was a scientist who sought to recreate the super soldier serum that created Captain America. He believed that the secret to his power lay in gamma radiation. It was actually Vita ray radiation, but he gets points for being in the ballpark. This, however, had a horrific effect on his body, causing his very blood to become irradiated and his muscles to grow to grotesque size. His personality split, or perhaps he always had two personalities, to become the two Jekyll and Hyde personas known as Puny Banner and Hulk. Unable to control his transformation based on intense emotions, people began to quickly realize that they wouldn't like him when he was angry. The US military under General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross set out to capture him, a man on the run. Bruce would eventually come in clutch when the US government would recreate the experiment that made him on Emil Blonsky, turning him into the Abomination. The Hulk would defeat him and continue to go on the run. Bruce would try to off himself at least once during this time, but big guy said no and hulked out. Banner eventually settled in Kolkata, where he served as a local physician until he was recruited by Natasha Romanoff to locate the Tesseract, also known as the Space Stone. Bruce eventually agreed, but it became a lot more, as he was always planned to become an Avenger. He reveals later on that he has learned to control his anger when he turns into the Hulk. He's the one that truly defeats Loki. He goes on to continue working with the Avengers after this, even after S.H.I.E.L.D. fell. Banner's time was mostly peaceful, with the Hulk being able to be reined back in due to Banner's love of Natasha Romanoff. However, he went berserk after the Scarlet Witch put a hex on him, which caused Tony Stark to call on the Hulkbuster suit to do battle against the self-proclaimed strongest there is. This actually resulted in a victory for Tony, as the Hulk was knocked out cold. After the end of the Age of Ultron, Hulk ended up on the planet Sakaar, where he was loved as a powerful gladiator until he was almost beaten by Thor, had the Grandmaster not rigged the battle. After this, Bruce became wary of the Hulk and decided to learn to control him, as the Hulk would either never come out or stay out for long periods of time. This led to Bruce maintaining full control, though remaining stuck in Hulk form permanently. The Hulk cannot be denied. He's one of the mightiest people on Earth, strong enough to be able to wield the Infinity Gauntlet's power without dying, something that puts him near the same strength as Thanos. But that isn't enough, as he's been beaten on multiple occasions by other Avengers, including Iron Man and Thor. So while it's sad that I can't put him higher, he has indeed earned his spot. Number 6. Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. Tony Stark has always been a tinkerer. While he never had the best relationship with his father, with the word strained being a little too light, he had always been very close with his mom, so you can imagine his devastation when he learned that they both had been killed in a car crash. He would inherit his father's company and fortune, stepping into the light as the living legacy of one of the greatest scientists and businessmen to ever exist. And he didn't disappoint. He gave a new definition to the term intelligent and an even newer term for playboy. He liked to party and was immature, but after a run-in with the Ten Rings in the Middle East, his life was changed forever. Tony Stark may have been dragged into those caves, but something else came out of them. This led to Tony questioning his company and considering turning pacifist, forsaking his father's legacy for making things to save lives. But when this didn't float too well, Tony didn't take it laying down. He built an armored suit like the one that helped him escape the caves and became a defender of the peace from every enemy, including his own business partner, Obadiah Stane. But he was not the only greedy businessman who would attempt to break the rules for money. Enter Justin Hammer, a man who sought not only to destroy Tony, but to take his work for himself. To that end, he recruited the son of a former Soviet spy to help him create weapons similar to Iron Man. He was responsible for creating the drones that nearly killed the small bean Peter Parker, and yes, I think this Iron Man mask kid is Peter Parker, and I'll die on that hill, as well as the armored suit known as War Machine, later the Iron Patriot, later War Machine again. After dealing with that, Tony was one of the first recruited Avengers, and was responsible for getting Ross off of Banner's back. Together with the Avengers, he faced many problems, ranging from the Battle of New York to the Battle of Sakovia. He even faced off against Captain America over the laws that would require them to register with the United Nations to continue their work. This led to a bloodlusted battle between Cap and Iron Man after Tony learned that Bucky was responsible for the murder of his parents. In the end, Captain America came out on top but spared his friend's life. This broken relationship never mended, but they laid aside their differences when Thanos threatened the world. In the end, Tony would sacrifice his life to destroy Thanos and his army, passing away in the arms of his wife, Pepper, leaving behind a daughter. Never cried so hard at a Marvel movie before, nor since. Well, actually, Black Panther. I cried at the end of that one, but for different reasons. God rest your soul, Mr. Bozeman, and thank you for entertaining us with your charm. That reminds me, I forgot to add Black Panther to this list. How irresponsible of me. But if I were to guess, I'd probably put him right about here, between Iron Man and number 5, Steve Rogers, aka Captain America. Chronically ill from birth, Steve Rogers was born at just the right age to serve during World War II, but due to his many ailments, he was not considered able-bodied. So what's a Steve to do? Get able-bodied. He's discovered by Dr. Abraham Erskine, who had been working on the American Project Rebirth to create a superior soldier to take the fight to Berlin. Dr. Erskine sought the perfect subject, and that subject was none other than Steve Rogers, due to his kind and selfless nature, and thus Captain America was born. Originally not allowed to enter the war, but after going AWOL to rescue a lost legion of troops, he was officially given the title of captain, and was allowed to serve in the war where his photographic memory helped bring down the rogue German science division Hydra. However, in doing so, he would sacrifice his life to stop a powerful bomb from being dropped on New York City, or so everyone thought. That was until he was found in the ice around the year 2012. After thawing out, he was determined to still be alive and returned to service as the first Avenger. He would fight in the Battle of New York and would fight against Hydra and bring down S.H.I.E.L.D. with it. He would then fight against Ultron, Iron Man, and in the 2 Infinity Wars. At the end of all of this, however, he would go back in time where he'd live a happy life with his wife, Peggy Carter, staying with her up until her death around the year 2014. He would return to the future where he'd bequeath his shield to Sam Wilson, the next Captain America. Now, some might be wondering why I set Cap so high. Besides the fact that he's one of the best Avengers ever and is just too cool for school, I would have to say that it's because he beat Iron Man, who beat Hulk. And while he did only beat Iron Man in the weaker suit, it's also true that Captain America has a pure enough heart to be able to wield Mjolnir, which at least puts him at early Thor levels of strength by default. And Thor is still stronger than Hulk. The only reason why he lost to him in Avengers is because he didn't want to hurt him. But he still ranks below Thor because by this time, Thor is strong enough not to even need Mjolnir to be the god of thunder. Number 4, Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. Originally an Air Force test pilot, she lost her memory after coming into contact with an alien power source derived from the Space Stone that had been created by the original Captain Marvel. She was taken back to Hala, the home of the Kree, where she joined their forces without her memory of a past life. Eventually, she would find her way back to Earth, where she would attempt to stop the invasion of the Skrull race on Earth, the Skrulls being mortal enemies of the Kree. While there, she finds the Skrull were deeply ingrained in human society already and had powerful places in politics and government organizations. However, after getting the help of a young Nick Fury, Carol discovers the truth. The Skrull are without a home. They had lost their home planet, and this invasion wasn't a military effort, but the effort of a group of refugees who just wanted to find a place to survive. Regardless, the Kree arrive on Earth to kill them all, and this leads to a battle between Captain Marvel and her old commanding officer, which Carol wins. She then vows to take down the Supreme Intelligence on her adopted homeworld of Hala, which she believes is corrupt. However, she leaves behind a sort of space-age pager for Fury to use if he ever needs her, which gets used in 2018 after Thanos' snap. She returns to Earth to deliver a malnourished Tony Stark who had been stranded in space with Nebula. While on Earth, she encounters Thor, who tries to intimidate her with his power, but she refuses to budge, which instantly earns her Thor's respect. She would later be instrumental in the defeat of Thanos, taking down his warship, the Sanctuary 2. She then 1v1s Thanos and actually manages to draw blood, which impresses the Titan, as so far very few have ever done that to him. She would then go on to meet Miss Marvel, and together they go on a bit of a space adventure with Monica Rambeau to stop Dar-Ben from stealing the resources of Earth to restore Hala, which was destroyed thanks to Carol's actions in destroying the Supreme Intelligence, which led to a Kree civil war. The powers of Captain Marvel are impressive, but such are all the powers of those that derive their power from an Infinity Stone. Carol's powers include increased strength, energy generation, and the ability to survive in space. But by far her most impressive feat is the ability for her to fly into a star and repower it with her own energy, which puts her at well beyond planetary levels of strength. She could destroy your world, yes. Hell, she could destroy your solar system if she wanted to. That's why I put her in close contention with the next member on the list. Number 3, Thor Odinson, aka the God of Thunder, aka the Lord of Thunder if you're the Grandmaster. Thor Odinson was born thousands of years ago to Odin, the king of Asgard. While considered the crown prince and the firstborn, Thor was actually the second-born son next to Hela, goddess of death. He never knew his sister because she had been sealed by Odin to stop her bloodthirsty conquest. This was to protect the world, but to be honest, Odin just sucks as a dad. After that, he raises 2 powerful sons, one of which is adopted. Thor, who turns out to be a spoiled, prideful, and cruel boy to Odin's own declaration, and Loki, who turns out to be a manipulator, liar, and schemer, willing to kill even his own brother for power. Thor, after causing a skirmish with the Frost Giants, is cast away to Earth, where he learns what it means to be a human and to be humble, causing him to get a new understanding of life, which is what causes him to once again become worthy of the hammer he once held. Loki attempts to destroy him and further attempts to seize the throne and destroy Jotunheim after learning that he is a Frost Giant. He hates this about himself and hates his father for hiding it from him, thinking that this was the reason why he was passed over for the throne. Thor once more faces Loki during the Battle of New York and would be present to face Ultron as well, though he was absent during the Civil War movie due to having been mutually dumped by Jane Foster. Prior to the dumping, however, he would return to Earth to save her after she came into contact with the Aether, also known as the Reality Stone. He would take her back to Asgard for treatment, only for the Dark Elves to attack, resulting in the death of Frigga, Thor's mother. Thor would later face off against the King of Dark Elves, Malekith, who was empowered by the Reality Stone, and kills him. Thor would later be thrust into a new adventure when Hela returns to claim the throne and breaks his hammer. Thor must locate strong friends, which would be Loki, Hulk, and Valkyrie, to face off against his sister, and only becomes victorious when he initiates Ragnarok. But this is far from Thor's final adventure. As it stands, he's the Avenger with the most solo movies. During Infinity War, he creates the Stormbreaker to face off against Thanos, to which he manages to actually heavily wound and later decapitate. After his failure in Infinity War, he takes it really hard. He neglects his training and enters a depressive state where he continually gains weight via absurd levels of drinking. But this did not stop him from returning to fight Thanos during Endgame, where he was instrumental in the defeat of the Mad Titan. He would then regain his confidence and begin training again, becoming the shredded Australian we all know and love. After this, he would face off against Gore, the God Butcher, who had taken hold of All Black the Necro Sword. That's the first canonical symbiote to originate in the MCU, by the way. It was the first symbiote ever, actually, and was the personal weapon of Knull, the god of all symbiotes such as Venom. Knull is known as the King in Black and, well, sorry, I just love symbiotes. Show me them teeth. Anyway, Gore had planned to kill all the gods. He ventured to the far shore where he met with Eternity, the personification of the cosmos, where he'd be granted one wish. However, instead of asking for the death of all gods, he simply asked for the revival of his daughter, Love. He would then pass away. Thor would become the guardian of Love thereafter and would give her the Stormbreaker while he himself reclaimed Mjolnir that had been restored by the recently deceased Jane Foster. Now, I generally put Thor and Captain Marvel very close together, though argument could be made that she has actually surpassed Thor, and I could agree with that. However, the reason why I don't put her above is because her greatest feat is powering a dying sun, while Thor's greatest feat, on the other hand, is taking the full unbridled fury of a neutron star. Now, why is this important? Well, a neutron star generally burns at about 10 million Kelvin, and while a star, like our sun, likely the same one that burns at about 15 million Kelvin at its core, it should be known that the entirety of that neutron star was focused to a single point, like a laser, which would increase its strength like focusing the sun through a magnifying glass. Furthermore, a neutron star is so dense that it has more than 1,000 times worth of gravitational force using Earth as a baseline. For reference, our sun, and likely the same type of star as the one over Hala, has a gravitational force of around 28 compared to Earth's gravity. So Thor was holding open a seized chamber while battling gravity 1,011 times that of Earth, all while being shot with a super laser comprised of that concentrated might of a neutron star. That being said, he also has the ability to summon the Bifrost, which can travel from one end of the universe to the other at near immeasurable speeds, and is used to enter the far shore where eternity waits. That, on top of everything else, he has thousands of years worth of experience that Carol Danvers does not have. An argument could be made that she could do the same feats, as she not only went into the core of a sun and powered it back up, but came out easily without any sign of burns. So in the end, it's very close, and it's hard to say who's stronger, but I give Thor the advantage based on experience. But even Thor is below who comes next. Number 2, Dr. Stephen Strange, aka Doctor Strange. Dr. Stephen Strange was a surgeon, and a damn fine one at that. He had a perfect record, and that meant something. To him. Particularly to him. He loved that record so much that he even refused to work on patients that he deemed too risky. That pride got the best of him when he went speeding off in his luxury sports car, injuring his hands to the point that he could no longer perform surgery. Dr. Strange then proceeded to waste all the money that he had just to fix the nerve damage in his hands to no avail. As a last-ditch attempt attempt, he heard that someone in Kathmandu had the ability to heal him, so he spent the last of his money getting a plane ticket where he went to speak with the monk. It turns out he stumbled upon the sorcerer supreme of the mystic arts. At first, his disbelief and pride caused her to deny him entry, but his determination caused her to accept him. She began training him so he could return to his old life, but as he grew better, the threat of Dormammu's return grew even closer. The New York Sanctum Sanctorum was attacked and its guardian was killed. Doctor Strange was on the run from Caecilius and the other zealots when the Ancient One sacrificed herself to save him, passing the title of Sorcerer Supreme on. Alongside Wong and Baron Mordo, they stood against Caecilius and later Dormammu himself, where Doctor Strange would proceed to utilize the Time Stone to lock them both in a temporal loop, resulting in a battle of attrition that Doctor Strange would win with his determination. In the end, the world was saved, but not without cost. Doctor Strange headed up the New York Sanctum and served as the new Sorcerer Supreme. After this came the events of Thor Ragnarok, where he proved himself stronger than even Loki at the time and helped locate Odin. But his big return was during the Infinity War movie, where his future sight allowed him to determine which future they should take. Without Strange, Thanos likely would have won. I mean, the same is true of all Avengers, but it's especially true with Doctor Strange, because he was the one who counseled Tony on which future and actions they took would likely be the correct ones. So think of it like this. If you were one of the poor unlucky folk who got spoiled in Endgame, just realize that Doctor Strange spoiled himself too. Then he tries to help Spider-Man and nearly ends all of existence as a whole with his botched spell. His latest adventure, Multiverse of Madness, is where things get wild. He travels dimensions in a horror style that most people criticize, but I found better than most other movies in that particular phase. In it, we meet a crazed Doctor Strange that kills other Doctor Stranges and makes use of the Darkhold. In the end, he dreamwalks into a dead body in a form of necromancy, touching things that should not be touched. But not only that, he takes the demons that try to drag his soul to hell and literally turns them into a cape to fly with. He then fights against the Scarlet Witch and tries to convince her to see the error of her ways, which she does. Now you see why I set Doctor Strange so high. Bro literally almost destroyed all of existence with nothing but a botched spell. Magic is the essence of the multiverse, and it allows one to alter the laws of the universe from time to other things. And that's before we get to chaos magic, which is literally just reality warp on steroids. Doctor Strange may not be physically strong, not more than your average human, but he possesses enough hacks that he can toy with even godlike beings, such as Loki or Dormammu. But even Doctor Strange pales in comparison to the final name on our list. Number 1. Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch. Wanda Maximoff was born in Sakovia and had a twin brother named Pietro Maximoff, aka Quicksilver. She didn't originally have powers, but a bomb killed her parents. She and her brother, seeking revenge against Stark Industries, who made the bomb that killed her parents, volunteered to be test subjects for Hydra. She and Pietro were the only ones to survive. He developed increased speed, and she developed a knack for chaos magic. She was there that day when Stark found the scepter under the Hydra base and attempted to look into his mind to see his fears. There, she saw his fears were of an ending world and him being unable to stop it. Despite the fact that they could have killed him then and there, she told her brother not to as she attempted to process what she saw. The two of them would eventually team up with Ultron to get revenge on the Avengers, but upon seeing what it was that Ultron had planned for the Earth, the two of them panicked and left his side. In the end, they joined the Avengers in Sakovia, where they attempted to stop Ultron from dropping the city upon the Earth to wipe out all of life. There, Pietro died, and in sorrow, she would rip out Ultron's mechanical heart, forcing him to jump into the last surviving body before being blasted by Vision. She would then work as a member of the Avengers until a lapse in judgment saw her kill a bunch of innocent people when Crossbones attempted to kill himself. She carried guilt about this and couldn't forgive herself, though Vision attempted to help her cope. After the events of this movie, she'd be hunted down by the Black Order for her connection to Vision. The two would barely escape with the help of Captain America. Allowed to live in Wakanda for a time, she wanted to help Vision get the stone out of his head for fear that Thanos would take it. The plan was to use it against Thanos or destroy it. But before they could take it out, Thanos arrived, and Wanda was forced to make the most difficult decision of her life, killing her love. As if that weren't cruel enough, Thanos rewound time, brought him back to life, and ripped the stone from his skull personally. Wanda never truly recovered from this. She would return to life after Hulk unsnapped her, where she got in a good few licks on the Mad Titan, but in the end it was Tony who killed Thanos. After that, she sought to find her lost love, hoping that he might be restored. She found him at a sword facility where she at least hoped to bury his remains. She discovered that they had been experimenting on him, which led her into a depressive spiral to continue pushing her down the rabbit hole. Eventually, she ended up in Westview, where her insanity reached the tipping point. She utilized her chaos magic to create a world of denial castle where everything she loved and wanted still existed. This was nothing but an effort to fool herself and a physical manifestation of the process within her mind. Agatha Harkness, however, attempted to make use of this, where she utilized the Darkhold against Wanda. Wanda awakened as the Scarlet Witch and left Agatha in a hellish state, cursed to live in Westview forever. Wanda would begin to read the Darkhold, seeking knowledge for how to make her dreams a reality, which led her to the multiverse. She set up a threat to cause Doctor Strange to help her, but he saw through it quickly and she turned on him. She desired to utilize America Chavez's powers to jump through universes, but Strange kept running from her. Utilizing the dreamwalking technique to take over the bodies of other versions of herself in different verses, she chased after Doctor Strange, leaving a trail of carnage in her wake until she got exactly what she wanted. And when she did, she found that it was not what she had sacrificed for, and thought that it would be better to die and take the dark knowledge of the Darkhold with her, rather than live in a world without the children she loved. And so she brought down Castle Wundagore on top of herself, ending the Darkhold's threat across all multiverses forever. Wanda Maximoff seemed slightly underpowered when she first started off, being portrayed as just another psychic, but as her story evolved, so too did her powers, and by the time Doctor Strange was introduced, she was a full-blown witch playing with forces she couldn't dare to understand. Her true power is not unlike that of Doctor Strange, but she still goes far beyond him. Her base potential goes beyond even experienced Sorcerer Supremes, and with the power of the Darkhold, nothing but slight dimensional barriers could stand in her way. She speedran the Illuminati, each of which were comparable to the strongest Avengers, and she did so with literally a wave of her hand. She had Doctor Strange, who had previously killed an even stronger version of himself, empowered by the Darkhold, running for his life and wetting himself. In the end, she was so strong that the only character who could kill her was herself. Even Thanos would have been a plaything to her, and I believe that goes all the way up to a semi-complete Infinity Gauntlet Thanos too. Wanda's hacks allows her to rewrite reality at her whims, and sets her so high that no other hero or villain, save maybe King Loki right now, who my sister insists that I mention because he's her favorite, can beat. And I'm not exaggerating. Doctor Strange never thought to go after the Book of Vishanti against Thanos, but against Wanda, you bet. Well, actually, that's not fair. In another universe, when Doctor Strange was a member of the Illuminati, he utilized the Darkhold to defeat Thanos, which is comparable to the Book of Vishanti. But all the same, we've seen a Darkhold empowered Doctor Strange, and he couldn't compare to Wanda. So in the end, Wanda is not only the strongest Avenger, even if she was an ex-Avenger, which might not be fair, I don't know, you be the judge, but she was also one of the strongest antagonists, if not the strongest antagonist that we've seen so far. And yes, I'm including Kang. Ant-Man beat Kang. You think Wanda's gonna have issues? But alas, that's my own personal list of the strongest Avengers. Now, did I question whether I should add Wanda Maximoff to the list because her strongest form actually appeared when she was no longer an Avenger, but technically a supervillain? I added her because she had at one time been an Avenger, and thought that it would be best to include her, but in the end, I want you to be the judge on that. And more so, I want you to give me your own personal list in the comments, or even refute my list. If I'm wrong, let me know. Just be sure that all debates and refutations are respectful to one another and aren't designed to hurt anyone's feelings. True heroes know to choose their battles and how to be kind, so please remember that. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to click that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Until next time, true believers, Excelsior!